Good morning, comic book fans. Welcome back to Comics in 5 Minutes. I'm your ever-loving host, Shorty. And I've got one today that I've been really looking forward to for quite some time. It feels like it's been a long wait for this one. But it ticks a lot of boxes just in terms of concept. There was like, yeah, I'm totally going to read it anyway. It's on my pull list. I've really got a lot from it. So now I'm going to tell you why you should probably like it too. I'm going to start with the artwork. Unfortunately, this is the bit where it's going to be, I think, probably the only negative thing I've got to say about it, and it is a minor trifle, but it's one that does, I think it's worth talking about. The front cover of this comic book is really good, with a lot of detail. I love the framing, I love the perspective points on it. It is fantastic. The inside artwork lacks that level of detail, and it not to the point that it is bland and forgettable and thin. I don't want to go that far, anything like that. Its use of colours and its framing and everything about how it tells a story visually is really good, but when I opened it up immediately after seeing the front cover, I was a bit like, oh, didn't stop me enjoying it. Didn't stop me enjoying it at all, but it is worth pointing out that your expectations, if they were like mine, might be let down ever so slightly by the lack of really intricate line work that I got from the cover of it. Maybe you've got a different cover and you're not going to get this thing from me. Maybe it's going to be brilliant. This is exactly what I wanted. And it is. It's great artwork, but I figure it's always worth laying stuff out so people know I'm not just blowing smoke up people's bottoms because I love their comic books. Because I do. I love this. Been looking forward to it for a while. It's a story about, well, at its heart, I suppose it's a story of working class Scottish lad, I think Klaus Weege, if I remember correctly, who's friends with some people who run a video rental store in the late 90s, and they basically, to keep the store open, are going to effectively try to make their own horror movie, but sell it off as a very famous cult-like horror movie that nobody has ever seen. Apparently it's one of the scariest movies ever, but nobody sees it, nobody knows the plot, nobody knows who's in it, and because it got destroyed in a viewing, and it got eaten by the VCR, he's going to try and recreate this horror movie. Now, that is the end of this comic book, because what the comic does until then is take its sweet time. It does not rush whatsoever. It revels in what it's trying to do in terms of storytelling, and it does it in a variety of interesting ways. Now, pacing is something which has come across my mind a couple of times recently, with comic books that felt like a few extra pages just to build up slightly are absolutely worthwhile doing, and not just filling several pages of wall-to-wall exposition, instead letting the story breathe a little bit, so definitely do more show than tell. And I feel like this one comes very close, if not exactly how I want it to do it. It does not rush whatsoever. The first opening sequence is the main character as a young boy watching a terrifying movie, in the same way that I did when I was a kid, and his mum, it comes over from clearly exhausted from days work and he's told him to go and play outside, because kids should play outside, and he's a young kid, he should probably not be watching the movie. And that instantly starts off with this idea of, yeah, there is some trauma going on there in his mum's life, and that gets added to later on in a particularly nice sequence where we see several years going past in a variety of very simple frames, where we see his mum having a drinking problem. And this is part of what I like about it. There's lots of little beats in this one page telling several years have passed, where we see an awful lot about who this kid is and why he is. Like a very young birthday party. The only people there are grown adults and his imaginary friend, who was the killer from that movie you watched when he was a kid. And you see him playing when he's happy on his bike with his imaginary friend and no other kids around. When he's in school, he is tormented. There's also a little bit where you think there's maybe some over-the-top stimulation, and it's affecting him that way. I think there is potentially a read on this character with ASD. I'm not 100% on it. I don't want to speak too far into that kind of thing. It's not something I'm like really familiar with, but I know enough of it to see some beats and some notes which I think might be indicative. But again, it doesn't spend ages just telling you all about that. It does it through visual storytelling. It also takes the time to introduce the characters in interesting ways, never with a case of like, here is this person, this is who they are, here are their 3 personality traits that are going to be relevant for the story. Instead, the people just talk to each other. You see how they respond to the world around them, when they are bitter and when they're funny and when they're angry and when they are scared. All of it comes together really effectively as character studies without necessarily having to tell you who they are. And again, it's show don't tell. It's absolutely brilliant. And then once we get to the crux of the matter that the video store isn't doing very well and something needs to be done about it, and the tape gets eaten by the VCR player, then we see something actually weird happening. Because to say this is a comic book exclusively about horror, nothing scary about it. It's actually really funny and heartwarming and lovable. And it's funny in ways that I think horror can be, without necessarily being gag-filled, late-stage Nightmare on Elm Street movies. It's just people enjoying horror and finding enjoyment in the ludicrousness of it all. And I think that's absolutely worthwhile. But the weird thing does happen at the end. And it's brilliant that he waited until, not quite the end, but almost at the end, to first give you an inkling that something is wrong. And then they saved that last set-piece, single-page moment to be like, it is wrong. There is something off-kilter about this story. Now you've had the setup. Now you're going to realise the twist. Now I'm going to tell you effectively why this comic book is worth reading. And I think it was worth reading before that, don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed it, but the ending is sweet as. It is beautiful. One extra side note in terms of dialogue, this is a Scottish comic book, and I'm fairly sure John Lees is Scottish. Genuinely like how the fact that it didn't read like Irving Welsh, there was no like writing and accent, but there's enough like little bits of dialogue and Scottish like thrown in there just to really make sure you know what's going on. The use of shite was particularly beautiful, but it all works really nicely to add a sense of place, including the artwork, which is fantastic, as I said, and it's the kind of thing where literally everything about it is showing me the world and inviting me in, and not just telling me what to expect and telling me what's happening. Very, very enjoyable comic book. I hope you like it too. That's it for me today, though. There's at least a couple more things I want to review, so make sure you do whatever is necessary to not miss out on our videos. Up to, definitely not including Animal Sacrifice. But that's it for me for now. Until I see you again, look after each other, everyone. Stay safe. Bye!